This year's iPad refresh was a little different than most years. Both the base iPad and iPad Pro received updates, but one was a little more interesting than the other. With the iPad Pro, it only received a CPU bump, with all other hardware staying the same. So if you already have an M1 iPad, then there's no reason to jump to this, as there are not many apps that are pushing the M1 to its limits. But the base iPad lineup received a complete overhaul. Gone is the home button, rounded edges, thick bezels, and the lightning port. This is the new iPad Generation 10. With its new design, it now matches every other device Apple has released in the last few years. I was glad to see the changes finally being passed down to the base model, as the Air and the Mini have had this design for 1 to 2 releases now. So with this new design, Apple has also changed a few other things. They have moved the front camera to the long side of the device. This makes it much better for FaceTime calls and recordings on the iPad. As well, they moved the smart connector to the bottom of the device. More on this later. But the biggest change to the iPad 10 is the charging port. Gone are the days of Lightning. USB-C is here, and I'm glad to see it. This allows the base iPad to do what its bigger, older siblings have been doing for a few years now. USB-C opens the door for the ability to use external hard drives, memory cards, and now with iOS 16.2, you can connect it to an external monitor, something I love doing with my iPad Pro. But with the change to USB-C, Apple made an interesting decision to keep this device with the original Apple Pencil. And yes, they did not handle it the best way they could. Apple did what Apple does. They make you buy a $10 adapter so that you can sync and charge the Pencil through the iPad. But I get why they did this, and this seems to be a controversial topic. Many users of the base iPad may have already bought the Apple Pencil 1, and they get to continue that for $10, rather than having to go and spend another $150 on an Apple Pencil 2. They could have included the adapter in the box, but again, this is Apple we're talking about, and I even tried with many different attachments, trying to get the Pencil to sync without that Apple connector, but nothing worked. So we are forced to buy this. But the other reason that we see the Apple Pencil support on this iPad is the front-facing camera. It has moved to the long side of the iPad. Now for FaceTime calls, when you have the iPad landscape, the camera is in a much better position, and everything is centered. Big plus, but this does not allow for the magnets that would charge the Apple Pencil Generation 2. And I am good with that, as this line of iPad is meant more for content consumption and video calls than say the iPad Pro line or even the iPad Air line. Now, expanding on the front-facing camera, we do have center stage, so if multiple people are in the frame, the iPad will adjust its zoom to allow for everyone to be in the shot. And if someone is speaking, then it will zoom to the person that is speaking, and when done, zoom back out. On the back, there is the standard one camera that this line of iPad has always had. And with the final change on this iPad, the smart connector has moved to the bottom of the device. This allows for the new Smart Folio keyboard to connect here. Apple has made some changes to the design from the Magic Keyboard. This case comes in 2 pieces. One as a hinge type case to allow the iPad to tilt to different viewing angles, and then the Smart Keyboard attaches to the Smart Connector. Apple has added a row of function keys to this keyboard, which is nice to see, but with the different design, this case allows for it, which is also the reason I did not buy this keyboard. First, the way that the keyboard works is not ideal for most situations where I want to be able to use my iPad's keyboard. This case is not lappable by any means. With the Magic Keyboard, the weight distribution is almost 50-50, so everything is balanced and easy to use. But with the keyboard, it is not, and that does not work well for me. As well, I would rather have a case that covers the screen when I remove it from the keyboard, as this is the perfect way to scratch the screen when putting it in or taking it out of bags. So the keyboard is a no-go for me. And something to note about this new iPad. The display is non-laminated. Some will notice right out of the box, but if you don't know, a laminated display means that the display is right up against the glass of the touchscreen. With this iPad, there is a slight gap between the glass and the display, which will cause more glare than if it was laminated. So using this in direct light or sunlight, you may be forced to use it at a different angle. I am sure this will change over the coming years, but as it is right now, the display is non-laminated. Prices for this new model saw a bit of an increase versus the previous iPad 9. The entry model of the iPad 9 started at $329, whereas the iPad 10 starts off at $449. For this reason, it seems that Apple is keeping the iPad 9th gen around for users that want that lower price in order to get into the iPad ecosystem. And nothing's wrong with that. iPads have an extremely long shelf life and continue to receive updates for up to 5+ years. So who is this iPad exactly for? Well, I bought this iPad for my wife. She wanted to get into some digital art and drawing and thought it was a good start. And if it goes well and she wants to upgrade in a few years, then my daughter can take over this iPad and she can get the Air or the Pro depending on whether she wants to continue. This can also be for the person who does a lot of FaceTime or Zoom calls on their iPad, or someone that consumes a lot of content on an iPad and just wants to be done with that home button being on the side of the device. Anyways, let me know your thoughts and feelings on this new iPad down below. I will continue to bring tips and tricks for this line of iPads, so if you are not already subscribed, be sure to click on that subscribe button for future updates. And if you made it to the end of the video, thank you. Please leave a like, as it really helps the video get pushed to more viewers like you. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.